Are you in it? Are you also in it?
No, 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 no. But I've been, I watch all the things. So yeah, no,
Yeah,
I know.
so there's a program for apprentices, and they have all this other content. We have these special calls, like we had a call with Aaron Turner on Friday, and then we're gonna have a call this week. And but then they did a special video, and this was for the practitioners as well. So I think practitioners can see it too. But it's very interesting. It was Linda Pransky and Dickon.
I just
And
watched that
did you just watch that?
yesterday.
That was so powerful to me.
What did you hear?
Well, the thing that I heard, so basically, Sharon, what they were talking about was people sharing Sid's message, recordings, and writings with their clients, people who they're sharing with. And I'll tell you, it really hit me for some reason. It was really strong because, for one thing, I related to some of the things that they were saying, which is when I first came across the principles now 2+ years ago, and I listened to Sid, I didn't really have much reaction to him other than thinking he was a very nice man saying some nice things. And I was actually more struck by those videos of the faces in the audience. That's what struck me about his videos. It's like, wow, they look really tuned in and happy. Well, and then later, as things changed for me, and then I would go back and listen to Sid and see things, I would start appreciating him more and hearing things and actually hearing really big things. So they were kind of talking about that, about how people hear, and this is what Sid said, they hear what they're ready to hear. And so that's why some people are impacted and some people aren't. And you can't predict who's going to hear it or when they're going to hear it. But I had this really stronger sense for how valuable his recordings are. Whereas there was a time, maybe, even recently, where I felt, oh, well, this is great. I have all access to all these other teachers. I don't necessarily need to read Sid or listen to more of his stuff. I've done it before. But now it looks different. And I had this really strong sense about that. And so last night, I have a friend who's in the apprentice program.
In the apprentice program, you said?
In the apprentice program. So we actually watched together the video with Dickon and Linda.
Uh-huh.
So that's already just a way to share. And do you know what I'm saying? It was very powerful.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what you all think about that. And Laura, you must have so much experience talking to people and trying to share Sid, maybe with success, and other times not. And you're laughing, so you probably have some good stories or something.
Oh, that's so great. I'm so glad you brought that up. I had just seen that video yesterday. And you know how Jan Chipman talks about when she first heard Sid, and it was like she was doing a check, all the boxes were checking. Like he would say a line and she'd say, well, that's true. Then he'd say something else, and it was as though she was having a mental checklist. And that's my experience last night listening to the two of them, that I could so relate. This is why mystery school is happening, because I saw it as a way to get, because my clients through all these years, my clients who listened to Sid and or read Sid, they just moved so much quicker. They got things, they understood where their experience was coming from. So they would stop looking outside themselves to fix things, whether it be their children as parents, whether it be their boss or their employees, or their spouses. Was the biggest one, that they would actually see, I don't have to fix my partner. So I took that and I realized how am I going to get more people
Mhm.
listening to Sid? I mean, and then we have these wonderful recordings. They're like golden, although I had the same exact experience that you just spoke about, Tom, that when I first listened to Sid, I had the feeling like, well, yeah, kind of, you know, yeah, I mean, there was nothing to argue about.
Right,
It was so
right,
simple.
right.
And I didn't even put it together initially that I was feeling so much better because he's not telling us what to do. He's not telling us how to live our lives. He's not giving us techniques or suggestions. So it never connected with me in the early days that I am improving my life, the quality of my life. Nothing in my life was changing. I was living in the same place, had the same car, getting the same salary, I had the same people in my life. But I was feeling so much better. And I'll tell you, that did not connect. I didn't
Yeah,
connect the dots until I began hearing more people who were listening to Sid say how much their lives were changing.
yeah,
And they would be able to tell me why.
yeah,
Like they would say, well, when Sid said blah, 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 it occurred to me, like, of course, and then I began realizing, here's Pallavi. Yeah. Then I began to realize the connection. That's the other great thing I love about this group is that we're learning from each other, just
yeah,
like I learned from the other three principals practitioners and years ago that they would share and I would say, oh yeah, that I get that too. I don't know. Hey, hi, Pallavi.
Hi. I was waiting. You didn't see me.
No,
Yeah.
no, you just came on. Like
No,
as soon as you
I
came
signed
on, I
off again
clicked.
because I was waiting for 15 minutes but whatever. I signed on again.
Oh, yeah, because you were not in my waiting room. I wonder
Oh,
what
weird.
happened.
Doesn't matter.
First time I heard that one, but anything's possible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
How you guys doing?
great. It's so
I'm
good
great.
to see you. We were just talking about, Tom opened up saying that he heard the practitioner's video of Linda and Dickon talking about how valuable it is for their clients. And sometimes even in a session, they will read from the missing link.
Mm.
There was one client Linda mentioned who was struggling so bad. She knew that whatever she had to say to this client, it was not going to hit home for her because she was in such a bad state. So Linda said, go home and listen to Sid and email me. And I think she gave her like 2 weeks, like listen to Sid for 2 weeks, every day, little bit for 2 weeks, and then email me. If I remember correctly. Is that what
Yeah, it's
you
kind
remember
of, yeah,
Linda saying that?
yeah,
Yeah. Not like it's a technique. You have to listen for 2 weeks. And even when I say, listen for 20 minutes, half an hour or read 20 minutes, half an hour of Sid's books for 6 weeks, that was an arbitrary number I just pulled out of the sky. Right?
yeah,
Because I figured 6 weeks is enough time to do a pre-test and a post-test and actually see if there's any change. Which, by the way, if any of you know, I have to post this somewhere. I don't know where to post it, but the psychologist who gave me the two surveys, Tom Kelly from Indiana State, Wayne State University in Indiana, and he's done all the collating for other programs in the past. He retired. So I need a research psychologist to put it together, but I'm sure I'll find somebody. Just thought, good opportunity to put that out in case you might know of someone.
I think Hannah maybe knows someone, and they were like, she's working with Dr. Bill Pettit, and they were talking about some kind of no, or she's working with maybe a client who works for the NHS or something like that. Anyway, you should contact her. Maybe she can help in some way.
Thanks. I'll email Hannah. Sure. Yeah. You know, it's the other wonderful thing about this community is the sharing. You know, when somebody heard something that I didn't hear or other people didn't hear, and we have this opportunity to share that stuff. So that's all. Where do you want to go next? Any insights you want to share? You want me to read something from the missing link? You want to keep talking about what it was like for you to discover Sid's, you know, what happened to Sid and how he talked about it?
I picked did I tell you this last week? Because I picked a page from the missing link for my new year when it was my birthday. And it was kind of, I liked it because it's kind of like the essence, I think, which anyway touches me most of Sid's teachings. It's on page 100. It's about nourishing the soul by living in the now and forgetting about the past and future and just be. So and he talks about how the now isn't like this day or this place, but the now is an inner space or an inner state of of being. And
Nice.
he says their meaning goes deeper. When such people refer to the now, they mean the personal mind is free from the contaminants of yesterday's memories and fears. I just thought this is so nice, this just being here now and looking for a nice feeling, the only kind of techniques
Yeah.
which are not techniques that Sid are
Yeah.
giving. I really like to go back there, and I really think I tend to overlook the importance of, because it sounds so simple. We kind of, or I kind of tend to overlook um, how deep the meaning of it is and how much there is to discover when I just listen to these very simple pointers in a way. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So do you want to read that, page 100?
Oh, I basically already read most of what's on there. I don't know. You want me to read it again?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Begin the process of nourishing the soul by living in the now. Forget the past and the future and just be, and you will surely be rewarded by living in the now. When Eastern mystics describe the now, they are not talking about today as a specific day of the month and year. Their meaning goes deeper. When such people refer to the now, they mean the personal mind is free from the contaminants of yesterday's memories and fears.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's in the chapter called Living in the Now.
Nice.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
I also felt like to me, being in the now has kind of a magical quality. I don't know if this is just like the way my mind works, or I work, I don't know. But there's this feeling of like when I stop being so logical and intellectual and trying to control and plan everything and spend more time just, being in the now, it feels like my life gets a more magical quality, as if like all these sweet things happen, like little coincidences or people showing up, support showing up, or just like joyful stuff in a
Yeah.
way. And I'm very interested in looking in that direction, because I sometimes get this feeling or this glimpse that I feel like there might be a totally different way of living possible. There might be a possibility of really living more in this state of trust and of like being this tiny little particle in the flow of life. And I don't know, there's something very fascinating to me in that, like
Yeah.
going away from the thinking, oh, I do everything, and I need to figure it out. Just like kind of going in this flow and like, I don't know. Does it make any sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I love what you're saying. I actually can feel it too. Because it kind of feels like we all have kind of our view of life and how it's working and what's going on. And we start learning things like in this conversation, and maybe we think we know a little something. But what you're pointing to me is like what you're pointing to me is like that's just a little bit. And there's this whole world, who knows, that you could fall into at any moment and it could be totally different. That's what I hear in your words.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
beautiful, really beautiful. And I got a sense, I don't know the exact words you used, but that word possibility really stuck out for me. The possibility of living there more often. And it has to do with trust. Trusting that we can let go of the reins a little more and things really do flow. And the only way I've been able to see that is by looking at the results. And it's not even like, I wouldn't say that I do it intentionally, that I let go of the reins. I'd say it's an automatic response in the moments that I realize I'm trying to direct things too much. I'm trying to control what's going to happen too much. And then I step back and something happens. It's not like nothing's going to happen and you're just going to be floating in space. It's hard to explain it, isn't it? Because it's a feeling.
Yeah.
Is this making sense? What do you think, Sharon? What's your experience of that? Whatever that is, right?
Um, I kind of like it that I still find myself caught up in trying to control things, and then when I see it, and then I'm like, oh, I don't have to. Oh, yeah, what a relief. Or I think of what Elsie said. I'm like, oh, what about this, that, and I go, so what? If things don't work out the way you planned them or thought you had control over, and then I just love that. So what? It works for little things and big things. I'm like, what's the big deal? Nothing, and it's kind of, I still get caught up in it, but again, when I realize, so what? I'm like, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter. And it just doesn't matter, Don't sweat the small stuff. So, yeah. And being, like you said, being now, that's, I have to bring myself back to that now and then. Now and then. And just be present, It's now, enjoy what you're doing right now, not thinking about what happened before. And I've been listening to Sid a lot more, going back to the books, and I've read all the books, and then some of them several times. I just keep going back, and I listened to the Grand Illusion yesterday, and it just kind of it brings you back. It reminds you, because sometimes I forget what I've already learned, or I get stuck back in my head, and I like the reminder. Um, yeah, definitely, it's a feeling.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
I forget all the time too. So, but also, like, we also remember all the time. So that's kind of cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. We forget and we remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like that's just for some reason that's all built in.
It's all built in. It's all built
We're
in.
human. I
Yeah.
have to remind myself, oh, that's right. I'm still human. I know all about Sid and the three principles, but I'm still human.
Yeah.
Then I can forgive myself. Oh, you did it again. So what?
Your human is showing, Sharon. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it was interesting what you were saying, Sharon, because I was on another call last week with Aaron Turner. I don't know, were you on that one, Olive?
No, I forgot, or I couldn't join. I have to watch the recording.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was great. And he referenced something that Elsie says, and I've heard Linda Pransky say it more often than anyone else, when people will talk about things that are troubling them. And they'll say something like, well, why is that a problem? Which just kind of blows your mind, right? So I'm having a really hard time with this, my job, and I hate it. And they'd be like, okay, well, why is that a problem? Is that a problem? And then it kind of stops you. It's like, well, is it really? And so I was sharing with Aaron afterward during the question and answer. I had a similar thing happen since last time. So I'm still cat sitting and dog sitting. And I'm taking care of this really sweet dog.
Oh.
Now she looks really sweet, but there's this one little thing, which was a really big thing with her. And I've taken care of her a dozen times at least. She loves to walk. She hates to come home. And she's a big dog and very stubborn, or she knows what she wants. So every time I come taking, and I'm out for a walk the first day or two, I'm like, oh my God, why did I agree to do this again? They're not paying me enough. But then at some point, this was even before the call with Aaron, a couple of days before that, I just started thinking, well, who cares? Like, who cares if I have a hard time getting the dog home? I always get it. I always get her home. There was one time where I was actually stuck out in the rain, not really hard rain, with her for like over an hour because I could not move her and she's big and I can't pick her up. I had to call somebody, a neighbor, to help.
Really?
Oh my
To help. And I was going to go back to the house and get the car and drive back 1 block. We were 1 block away. She wouldn't move. And I had a friend come to stay with her while I went home to get the car. And as I walked down the block away from her, she got up. And that's the only way I got her home. So anyway, that's all. You know how the past, you were talking about the past, the contamination of the past. So when I was walking her the first couple of times, I was like, oh, I would think about that, even though it only happened once. So anyway, I was walking her and I was like, who cares if I'm having a hard time? I don't care. We'll get home. And then the next couple of days, things changed. Because it started to, as I was walking her, it started to occur to me to do little things that were just totally intuitive.
Like
And,
what, Tom?
well, it's kind of weird. She likes to go into people's yards and pull on the leash. I just started holding the leash very gently, like midway through the leash. And I kind of tuned into how she was walking, and I walked right next to her the whole time, tried to. And when my mind got busy, which it does, it's a perfect metaphor. When my mind got busy, all of a sudden she'd be drifting back and and then I'd be like trying to pull her. And then I just started talking to her like she understood me. Like there are certain places where she wants to veer off into the bushes because honestly, she likes to find crap to eat. That's what's going on. And when I see it's a lot of it's just about awareness. When I kind of notice what she's doing and she's veering off, I'm just like, I just give the leash a slight pull. And I'm just like, we're not going there. And she would listen. But there are still a few places, especially during the day when it's hot out, she'll just like lay down and she'll just like look at me, daring me. What are you going to do about it? And actually one day, like I actually didn't really hurt it, but I strained my back trying to like lift her up from behind to get her moving. But then the other thing that happened was I was on a call with some friends and I was talking about this. And the friend said, well, does the dog like treats? And I said, yeah, the dog likes treats, but it doesn't work when we're walking. It doesn't fall for it. But something occurred to me. I was like, well, just because I tried that once and it didn't work doesn't mean it'll never work. And I noticed her family has a whole drawer full of all kinds of treats. And some of them are really good treats. They almost look good to me. You know, it's bacon and salmon. They smell really, some of them smell really. I thought, I'm going to try one of these other treats. So it turns out if I have the right treats, and I have them like in my pockets and all kinds of places, if I have the right treats and I can anticipate where she's about to sit down, I get a treat out and keep her moving. So the walks have become, except for some exceptions, the last week, the walks have become easy. But it's all because I said, who cares? But then wisdom kicks in. And I'm doing things that I don't think I even know what I'm doing. I'm just having an intention that I'm not stressed out about whether they're easy or hard. I don't want to be stressed out about it. Isn't that amazing? It's such a silly example.
Yeah.
What a great story. I love that. So she was your teacher.
Yeah.
She's turning you into a dog whisperer.
Yeah, she's teaching me, she's telling me when she wants to treat. She's training me.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's kind of a funny story, and we'll see. I still have like 3 more days left before the people come home, but it's interesting how
Fascinating.
And the other thing was I was getting resentful of like the owners because it used to be the dog could just be let out sometimes in the garden, in the big backyard. But they've made their backyard so beautiful and so many exotic plants and things, the dog's not allowed out there anymore because she digs things up. And I'm thinking to myself, guys, you obviously have money to build this beautiful backyard and this garden and thing. Couldn't you like create a space for her? But it's, but then I'm thinking, okay, now I'm judging them. And I'm telling them how they should be running their lives when whatever they're doing works for them, like it's not about me. but I, what I'm saying, but I was noticing those thoughts coming up. It's like, wow, I'm having a judgmental thought. That's kind of silly. Who cares? I'm having a judgmental thought. Who cares? So anyway, it's almost like I could write a whole chapter of a book on this one.
No, really.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Pallavi.
You really could. Like, it's so interesting when you look at life that way. Like, it was a beautiful story, and there's so much to learn from that in every part of it, and super interesting.
Yeah.
And also what you said now about the owners, about having these kind of thoughts. I sometimes have this with my customers. Like today, I got an email from a customer which was really out of line from how I see the whole thing. Like he was being very complicated and stuff. But then I suddenly realized a new possibility, to just not answer on that level and to just not answer to what he was talking about, but to say something different and to just, put it in a completely different direction. And it was so interesting because I kind of felt like, oh, I never saw that before, that when somebody says something that feels kind of, I don't know the word, where you feel like he's judging you or complaining, that you can kind of just let it pass by and not take it personally at all. It was so interesting. It was like a whole new thing suddenly popping up in my reality of, oh, I could do that. It's so cool.
Because it's so easy to get sucked into the level, like you said, the level that somebody comes at you with, to respond from there. But you were responding.
Yeah. You know what I just heard about this? That it's like moving from the personal to the impersonal. And look at how much we learn. How much we learn. Like you moved, first Tom and then Pallavi, both of you. Tom's dog story, you moved from the personal, like, boy, this is taking up a lot of time, a lot of my time. I'm not getting paid enough. And then all of a sudden you went to like blank canvas, not caring,
Mhm.
not seeing it as a big deal anymore.
Yeah, yeah, that was
So
it.
what event? And in that moment, you went into the impersonal, not intending to, but that's like what happens, right?
Mhm,
Do you
mhm.
get that sense?
Yep.
Like it just, we then drift into the impersonal where we operate so much better and we learn so much, like learning how to communicate with a dog,
Yeah,
learning how to communicate with your customers, that how to not, by oh, somebody taking it personally would have reacted to that customer's email. But when you don't take it personally, you just chalk it up to, it's the way they're seeing it. I see it completely differently.
yeah,
So there's this element of understanding that comes automatically when we allow ourselves to be present in the impersonal, the spiritual, call it whatever you want to call it. It's away from the ego, the personal thinking. And I was also thinking too, like anybody listening to us, I kind of wish I said this early on. People already shut us off. But I hope that people don't hear that we're like Pollyannas,
right.
right? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I get more done when I just let go of trying to direct things and control things. It's like more gets done. And, you can't see it until you experience it. It's not something somebody could say to me, well, you'll get more done, Lori, if you give up control and let the flow of life take you along. If somebody said that to me, I would like, man, I can't write. Good. Works for you. Good on you. But you have to like experience it in your own life to say, holy cow, it really does work like that.
Yeah,
Wild. So wild.
I also feel there's an element of that it's not really about what I'm actually doing. I think I feel more quiet or more relaxed because during the times when I'm not doing it, I'm not thinking about it so much because it seems to me that when I'm getting stressed out and feel like I'm having so much to do, it's not actually about the stuff, it's more like you get so busy in your head and then the world seems to go so fast. And I think Sid talks about that too, that it's not the world going so fast, it's your mind going so fast. And like at some point I just started watching myself, like sitting here in my comfy chair, whatever, and thinking about making a list of all the things I need to do. And you can do this like for hours a day. I think we basically all do, or at least I have done this a lot, like spending all the time that I'm actually resting and not taking care of anything, still thinking about it. And so
yeah,
of course I feel like I've been busy the whole day, but I haven't done anything more than on a day where I'm quiet in my head and just do the stuff that I'm doing. So even on this very practical level, it's just yeah, it's absolutely not like you're not doing anything anymore.
Right.
And what you just said, Laurie, I think um really the opposite is true. It's like from a more quiet space, more good ideas come up, and more creative solutions come up, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I love this topic that we wound up zeroing in on about not caring. And that's not in a bad way. Like people will say, well, I don't care about that anymore. But that comes from ego, from upset, from, if we're not in our ego, we're not getting upset about stuff. um, it's not caring from annoyance and giving up. It's not caring from a realization, a recognition that thinking about this isn't, useful, productive. There's like nothing to think about whatever this thing is, and it brings me back to one of my very first insights. I was going to say the word epiphany, and I kind of thought, well, that's kind of heavy, but you know what? This was an epiphany in my mind. So I'm sitting with, most of you know Keith Blevins, the psychologist who gave up his post as the clinical director at Baylor University in order to work with George Pransky way back when. So I was doing the practitioner training in La Conner, and that was when Keith was working with the Pranskys. And I sit down with Keith and I'm like miserable because I'm turning 40 and I'm getting a divorce and I am childless at 40. Oh my God. So how am I going to meet a man? Back then people were getting married in order to have children. And, what do I have? A 3-month period here? So I was like freaked out. And Keith said these words to me, and there I am like pouring my heart out to him. And Keith just said, well, so what? And anybody listening to this, don't hear this as a technique to tell people, so what, or don't care. It's not a thing to do. It's just this is how I understood it after the fact, later on, that in Keith's quiet mind and his, and the rapport, we had wonderful rapport. That's what came to him. My memory is, obviously I was not happy with him. And I'm thinking, well, easy for you to say, because he had a daughter, Maddie, who was, pre-adolescent at the time. And I just left that office. I was not happy with what he had to say. How can you say so what? I mean, come on, give me a break. And I go out to the parking lot. And the first people I saw was a mother holding her baby. Now, from probably age 30 to age 40, I don't know if it was that a whole decade, but probably close to it, I would cry. I would have tears, maybe just come to my eyes, but sometimes trickling down when I would see a mother and a child. Because I was this poor childless person. I'll never be a mother. I'll never be a grandmother. Oh my God, how terrible. And it was terrible. I'm not minimizing that. I walked over to them and I started a conversation with them, and that was it. I was cured. I never felt bad again. And you can't make something like that happen. That's got to be an internal shift. How does that, you can't no behavior modification program is going to come anywhere close to an internal transformation where you all of a sudden realize, oh my God, I can live a fine life. It'll be different than most of my friends and relatives. They'll be different, but I can still have a great life. It may not seem like a big deal to you guys, but
Oh, that's beautiful. That's so cool to see such a shift happen, right? It's amazing.
Yeah, I thought I probably had mentioned this in this group before, but
not the whole story. I knew a little bit about having kids, but not this story.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I love these kind of stories, like when somebody says something so so simple, so short, but yet so profound, and like you say, with this kind of laugh or report that you somehow hear it, right?
Yeah.
Like reminds me like when I was about 20 something, I was in some kind of spiritual groups, and I was dealing with my issue with my dad. Like my parents got divorced when I was 7, and my dad had married again, and he had his new wife had a daughter who was roughly my age. So I was, as a kid, we were jealous, and like all this drama. And so in these groups, I was still complaining about how my dad didn't love me the way he should, and it's and it makes me laugh. At some point, this guy, this coach or therapist whom I really like, he said something very similar to me. He just said like, just stop trying to change your dad and just love him as he is. But like in this way of just stop it, and it helped. Like for some reason, I wasn't at a point where I could hear it, and I could see the absurdity of it all, and of going round and round with the whole thing. And it's just great. These moments are just great.
Yeah. The wake up moments, the transformation moments, and sometimes, often it seemed in my life like it really was one thought. I had a one thought shift today or recently, and I don't recall now what it was. When I recall it, I'm going to have to write it down, because it was like all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, that one thought changed everything about how I had been viewing this situation. And I don't remember what the situation was right now. Wow. Yeah. So interesting, isn't it? Like you can never get to the end of your internal exploration. What's going on behind the scenes, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what I hear and what Keith was saying, or what he probably saw, was that you were upset about something, and he could see that actually you weren't being hurt by what was happening, or it didn't happen, and you weren't being diminished at all, and he could see that. So I think that's really beautiful when someone else can see, because I think we're all, maybe most of us, are sort of subtly or not so subtly trained. It's kind of like what you were, Pavlovia, what you were saying with the email. We're subtly trained to go into that with the other person and be sympathetic, and sometimes that's appropriate too, and agree how bad it is. But he was very wise and kind in knowing that there was a different reality for you that you could see, and you did see. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I love that, Tom. It's like when somebody can see that you're perfectly okay, even if you can't see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, one of the 3P coaches once talked about this. I don't know who it was. That when he starts with a new client, he always checks that with the story the client is coming with, if he can still see that the client is well underneath, that he's still well with the whole thing. And that maybe once or twice it happened that there was such a big thing, or an issue where he himself had an issue with, that he felt like, no, I'm not the right guy to do this, because I'm feeling bad for him. Like I can't see his well-being with this thing. So he would be better off somewhere else. And I thought that was a very wise thing to
Totally.
look at.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think maybe, Lori, with your story, that's maybe why it's possible to hear it, don't you think? And to not be offended if it comes from this space where he can see that you are like beautiful and well and fine, even even when you don't see it yourself. I think somehow maybe we just feel that, right?
Absolutely. And my experience of, well, I could be okay, didn't happen cognitively until later. It was like all of a sudden I was just okay. You know what I mean? Like, and then later, I think I actually was writing about it when cognitively it occurred to me like, oh, you know, I that I saw myself as having the ability to have a fine life. That was just my conditioned thinking that the only way I could have a fine life was to be a wife and a mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Keith didn't have to explain any of that to me. He was just with me, like you were all saying, seeing the innate health that we all are fine and perfect.
Hmm. You know, there's something else about your story that struck me, Lori, is that, um, you know, when you were with that mother and child, right?
Yeah.
You strip away all the story of what's going on in our lives and society, and even who the mother is.
Yeah.
Take that away. In that moment,
Yeah.
you know, you are with a child, enjoying the child's presence, which is what you want as a mother. I mean, there's all this other stuff. You know, the thing is, like, I haven't had kids, but I've had so many nieces and nephews and friends who've had kids, and I really enjoy them. And there's something about that I've thought many times in that moment when you're with someone, with a child, or it could be any person, but you know, like a child, it doesn't matter in that moment who's the father, who's not the father, who's the parent. You're just with this child, this amazing being. And children are, to me, are especially like, I have friends who have a, you know, here in Portland, who have a 4-year-old girl who sometimes they've asked me to watch her when they go out to dinner or something. And in those moments, I have a child.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
really have
Yeah.
a child.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's truth in there. So you get to experience those things on that level. So that struck me when you were, and the fact that you were moved to go up and spend time with them
I know.
without even like
No
considering.
thought. There was
Yeah.
no thought like, oh, this would be a good thing for me to do to break this cycle. There was no thought. I just went zoom. Like, I want to check these two out.
Yeah, and it opened up that possibility for you. You know, coming back to that word possibility, it opened up that
Yeah.
possibility for you to
Yeah.
have an experience of being with a child
Yeah.
in a moment. Yeah.
And I can so relate to what you say, Tom, about other children. In the moments you're with them, they're your child.
Yeah.
And that's the oneness of life, right?
Yeah.
It's not me and you. We're all from the same energy. You know, I often joke about how all my clients are my children. And I probably wouldn't be so good with my own kids. I don't know,
Who
who
knows?
knows?
Yeah.
But is that possibility that
Yeah.
I would have been a controlling, what do they call the mothers who were the helicopter mom or something? Who knows, But I don't have to do that with clients or
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah.
Sometimes my friends are my children. They
Yeah.
come for advice,
Yeah. It just struck me that maybe you can use this with parents, but maybe with parents having a hard time with kids, it might be good advice to tell them to forget that they're the parent for a while. Like just for a moment, forget you're the parent.
Yeah.
I think that actually might be helpful.
Getting their parenting conditioned thinking out of
Yeah. And
their way.
just have that moment.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it?
Mhm.
Are you a mom, Sharon?
Yes, I have I have a daughter. I have one.
Oh,
Does any of this make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Have you had that experience where you're with your daughter and sometimes you're really present in that space of love without thinking, how am I doing as a parent? How am I doing?
Yeah, yeah, more or less. It's a
Yeah.
long story.
Yeah. George Pransky, writes, Jack Pransky wrote Parenting from the Heart, which is a lot like that, where you just, when you're coming from a space of love, it's different. And kids feel the difference. Kids feel the difference. Like and it's innocent. A parent who comes from a space of, oh, I have something I have to impart, there's a responsibility, I have to make sure that this, that, and the other. I mean, of course, you're gonna, teach them not to walk out into a busy street, and look both ways before you cross the street, all that stuff. But there's a different energy behind being in a space of love without all the requirements, right? All the conditioned thinking about what I need to do as a parent, as a friend, as a whatever. Just being in that moment, like Tom's description of being with the dog. Yeah, that's a great metaphor, Tom.
Yeah.
Being in that space of all possibility and letting wisdom guide you, letting that flow of life guide you, the energy between you and the dog, or you and the client, or you and the child. Let that energy guide you. I love where these things go,
Yeah.
right? So fun. Well, we got just a few more minutes, guys. What do you want to say? Silence is golden, right? Sometimes there's nothing to say. Should we just wrap it up and say, see you next week?
Yeah. Thank you. This was really wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Thank
It was
you.
nice to see everyone.
Yeah. Nice to see you.
You too.
Thank you.
Great to see you, Sharon. It's been a while, huh?
Oh yeah, I've had a fun last few months.
Yeah.
Oh, what, last few months?
Oh, I was really sick for a couple months, so I
Oh, no.
was kind of yeah.
Oh,
So
wow. I
I
didn't
still
know that.
connected, but yeah, I didn't say anything, but yeah. So I was still trying to listen, and a couple things I listened without without my face on there. Yeah, I'm all better now though.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm going to
Yeah.
stop the recording. We could talk a little bit more.